candle flame extinguishes without warning. In the darkness, the first sound is a single deliberate knock. It's hollow like a coffin lid closing. Then another and another. The rhythm quickens, pounding from the walls, the ceiling, and the floorboards beneath their feet. 17-year-old Esther Cox sits rigid on the bed, eyes wide, clutching a blanket to her chest. The knocks are so loud that it rattles her iron headboard. Beside her, her sister tries to light another candle, but the match flares and then hisses out. The smell of smoke fills the room, not from the match, but from the corner. A flame blooms up the plaster wall, racing upward like it's alive. Before anyone can move, something heavy slams against the dresser. A trunk is dragged across the floor by some unseen force. The lid bangs open. A blanket sails into the air. It actually twists as though gripped by an invisible hand and lands across Esther's face. Then the writing begins. On the wall just above her bed, jagged letters etching themselves into the plaster. Esther Cox, you are mine to unalive. I'm John Genua, you're watching America's Strangest History. Esther's brother-in-law bursts in with a bucket, dousing the fire, but the words remain scorched into the wall. And outside, in the quiet street of Amherst, Nova Scotia, neighbors peer from behind curtains. They whisper about a girl in a haunted house and the thing that claimed her. Amherst, Nova Scotia, 1878. It's a small, tightly knit Victorian town of wooden homes, cobblestone streets, and oil lamps flickering against an early winter's dark. Life moves at a deliberate pace here. Everyone knows their neighbors, and everyone knows Esther Cox, or at least they think they do. Esther is 17. She lives in a modest two-story home with her sister Olive Teed, Olive's husband Daniel Teed, and their 2 young children. Also sharing these cramped quarters are Esther's other siblings and even a couple of boarders. It's a crowded but respectable household. Esther's slight, with a quiet manner and an underlying restlessness under the surface. That restless energy finds an outlet one summer evening in August 1878 when she attends a buggy ride with a local man named Bob McNeil. What happens next will never fully be understood. Esther returns home pale and shaken. She later confides to her sister that McNeil tried to assault her. She escaped, but the fear lingers. The neighbors gossip, and Esther grows withdrawn. And then the sounds begin. At first it's subtle, faint rustling near the bed at night like mice in the walls. Then muffled thuds coming from under the floorboard. The family dismisses it. Old homes creak, right? A strong winter wind can certainly rattle the beams, I think. But soon, the noises become deliberate. Knocks that answer back in rhythm when somebody taps on the wall. Odd. A bed trembling in the night so violently that Esther's sister wakes up and clutches the frame to stop it. Very odd. The first real fright comes when Esther screams in her sleep. Her family rushes in to find her face flushed, eyes wide as though fighting for breath. Her skin is unusually warm, too warm, and her body swells as though filling with air. Then, without warning, she deflates in a long, slow exhalation. So, a doctor is called. He listens, takes notes, and then later admits he's never seen anything like it. The knocks continue every night. They move from the bedroom walls, to the ceilings, to the floors, and finally into the furniture itself. One evening, a pillow is yanked from beneath Esther's head and hurled across the room with everyone watching. Now, it's around this time that the household realizes something unnatural is in play, and whatever it is, it's clearly focused on Esther. By late autumn 1878, the disturbances in the Teed household are no longer confined to knocks and shaking beds. The first fire starts in Esther's bedroom. A sudden smell of burning draws the family upstairs, where they find a small flame crawling up the wallpaper near the bed. Now, there's no candle nearby, no lamp, so no logical source of ignition, right? They stamp out the fire, but before anyone can breathe a sigh of relief, another one spontaneously flares up on the opposite wall. Then, another starts up on the mattress itself. Got that? Daniel Teed, who was up till now somewhat tolerating the earlier noises, now begins to fear for his family's safety, so he sends his children away to relatives. Esther, on the other hand, he insists must be watched constantly. Furniture begins to move by itself. A heavy trunk drags across the floor like it's being pulled by some unseen hands. Chairs scrape violently, legs actually gouging the wood. Objects become weapons. A potato hurls itself across the kitchen, striking Esther's sister on the shoulder. Scissors land with a metallic thud inches from a visitor's head. Threatening messages appear. The most chilling? Jagged letters on the wall above Esther's bed, burned right into the plaster. Esther Cox, you are mine to unalive. You heard it. At this point, word of these fantastical happenings spreads quickly in Amherst. Neighbors begin hanging around outside in the evenings, hoping to hear the infamous knocks for themselves. Some are actually invited in, and they don't leave skeptical, they leave true believers. Let's talk about witnesses. Start with Dr. Carright. He's the local physician. Dr. William Carright decides to spend the night at the Teed home to observe. He records in detail a bunch of inexplicable things, like knocks that answer his questions, objects moving with no visible cause, and then bedding stripped from Esther and thrown onto the floor while she's still lying on it. He also reports a large carving knife shooting out a kitchen drawer and embedding itself into the floor. Crazy, right? Next, we have clerical witnesses. 2 ministers visit, one right after the other. They perform prayers and blessings. The first is interrupted mid-prayer by 3 deafening raps that shake the room. The second is forced to stop when a chair tips over and slides across the parlor. You can't make this stuff up. Local citizens also witness these unexplained phenomena. Merchants, neighbors, and even a few town officials actually signed sworn affidavits describing what they saw. Now, these events would later be published in the Amherst Gazette and then picked up by newspapers as far away as Boston and New York. For the Teed family, these visits are a double-edged sword. Witnesses bring credibility, but also notoriety. Amherst is now whispering about the girl in the haunted house. Unfortunately, some whispers carry accusations. Hoax, witchcraft, hysteria. And yet, the attacks on Esther grow more personal and more violent. It begins with bruises. Small at first. Dark smudges mysteriously manifest on Esther's arms and legs, appearing overnight without explanation. Then, scratches, raised and red. They run along her forearms like they were made by invisible fingernails or claws. By early winter, the violence escalates further. Witnesses describe seeing bite marks appearing across her skin in real time. We're talking deep impressions, perfectly human in shape, yet she's alone in the room when they appear. Esther cries out in pain, clutching the bitten area while the marks slowly begin to fade. Her body is no longer her own. On multiple occasions, she's observed to swell unnaturally. Her face and limbs puff up as if filled with air, only to deflate with a long, wheezing exhale. Now, during these episodes, the knocks grow louder. They start pounding in sync with her heartbeat. No joke. Convulsions start soon after that. Esther collapses into violent fits, thrashing on the bed while her eyes rolling back into her head. At the height of one of these seizures, a voice fills the room. Deep, guttural, coming from no visible source. It speaks directly to Dr. Carright, who's at her bedside at the time. She is mine. Leave her be, or you'll suffer too. Carright demands to know who's speaking to him. After a brief pause, 3 sharp knocks, deliberate, like an answer in code. On another night, a boarder in the house reports hearing 2 voices conversing in the darkness. One male, one female, though no one is present but Esther. The words are indistinct, like a whisper, but the tone is unmistakable. Angry, possessive, threatening. At this point, Esther's too afraid to sleep. She starts keeping a light in her room even during the day. But the entity, or whatever it is, doesn't need darkness, and it sure isn't shy in front of strangers. Fires erupt in broad daylight. Objects fly while visitors sit inches away, and the threats continue, carved into wood, whispered in her ear, or announced with bone-shaking knocks. One thing is clear to everyone who witnesses this. The haunting is not about the house. It's evidently about Esther herself, who likely follow her wherever she goes. By early 1879, the Great Amherst Mystery is no longer a whispered local story, it's a bona fide spectacle. The Amherst Gazette runs detailed reports. Halifax papers pick it up. Within weeks, the haunting becomes news as far away as Boston and New York. Headlines speak of the tormented girl and devilry in Nova Scotia. The Teed household, already cramped, now has strangers knocking on the door nightly. Merchants, traveling salesmen, curious townfolk, all looking to witness the phenomenon for themselves. Some come out of morbid fascination, Others bring Bibles and holy water. Local clergy attempt blessings and exorcisms, often in full view of a packed parlor. One minister recites scripture over Esther's bed. Midway through, the bed lifts slightly and slams down hard enough to crack the frame. Another arrives with a Bible and a vial of holy water. The moment he sprinkles it, the lights flicker and a ceramic pitcher shatters against a far wall. Both men leave pale, shaken, and refuse to return. With so many onlookers, the disturbances become almost theatrical. Knocks answering questions from the audience. Heavy furniture sliding across the floor on their own volition. Matches ignite in midair before falling, still burning, to the carpet. And a tablecloth whipped itself out from under a full set of dishes without breaking a single plate. But notoriety inherently breeds doubt. It's the human condition, right? Whispers start. Is Esther faking it? Is this an elaborate scam for attention? Skeptics point to the money being offered by newspapers for exclusive accounts. Others note that the events seem to intensify when certain people are watching. And then comes the turning point. During a visit to a friend's home in a nearby village, a fire breaks out in a storage room. No one's injured, but Esther's accused of setting it. She insists that she had nothing to do with it, that he followed her there. Unfortunately, the court isn't convinced and she's arrested. She spends a month in jail for attempted arson. When she returns to Amherst, the welcome wagon is long gone. Neighbors who once signed affidavits now avoid her in the street. The Teed household is weary. They're financially drained, and at this point, they're desperate for peace. The public fascination that once shielded her is gone, and without the crowds, Esther is alone with whatever that thing is. The summer of 1879 brings a strange quiet to Amherst. The fires stop, the knocks grow less frequent, furniture stays in place. To be clear, it's not like the disturbances stopped overnight. Instead, they kind of tapered off. The change appears to coincide with Esther leaving the Teed household. She starts spending time with friends and relatives, moving between towns. In each new place, there are whispers of odd incidents, small fires, missing objects, unexplained bangs in the night, but never the full-scale chaos of the Teed home. By the 1800s, the Great Amherst Mystery is no longer front-page news. Esther marries twice, works various jobs, and lives a mostly quiet life until her death in 1912. She never publicly recanted her claims, and perhaps most notably, she never profited from her notoriety. Now, there are a number of theories that attempt to explain what happened to Esther. Attempts to explain the unexplainable. First, poltergeist attachment. Many paranormal researchers point to Esther's traumatic assault as the trigger. It happened just before the activity started up, right? In fact, it's been observed that poltergeist cases often focus on young women under emotional stress. The energy is said to feed whatever unseen force is present. In Amherst, the focus was clearly on Esther. We've got the physical attacks, the voice addressing her by name. These are all cited as classic evidence of this form of attachment, poltergeists. Next, we have psychological trauma and psychosomatic phenomena. Skeptics suggest Esther's experiences were rooted in psychological distress, possibly combined with undiagnosed epilepsy or hysteria. Hysteria is a Victorian-era diagnosis for unexplained symptoms in women. It's where we get the phrase, "she's acting hysterical." Now, this might account for her fits and swelling, but not the independent witnesses who saw objects move and self-igniting fires. How about a hoax, partial or entirely? Some historians believe the events were staged by Esther or others in the house, perhaps unconsciously at first, then maybe deliberately as public attention grew. A problem with this explanation is the dozens of sworn affidavits from upstanding citizens, clergy, and professionals who described events they simply couldn't explain. We also have the multiple cause hypothesis. It's a sort of modern middle ground. Esther may have had genuine psychosomatic symptoms layered with opportunistic pranks by others in the household. Remember, it was a pretty packed home. In this scenario, all craziness is magnified by the power of suggestion in a small town. In that kind of environment, even a squeaky floorboard could become a ghostly knock. I find this theory to be somewhat weak and spurious. So, when Dr. Cartwright was asked years later if he thought it was all a hoax, he shook his head and said, "I don't know what I saw. If it was trickery, it was beyond human cleverness." Think about that. And so, the Great Amherst Mystery remains just that, a story with too much testimony to dismiss, yet too many impossibilities to believe. The house in Amherst still stands today. Its paint is fresh, its windows long since replaced, but the walls, the bones of the place, they're the same ones that once shook with the sound of phantom knocks. Esther Cox is buried in an unremarkable grave in Amherst's Roby Street Cemetery. Now, there's no mention of the haunting on her stone, and no hint of the year her name made headlines. The affidavits still exist. They remain in historical archives, brittle paper bearing the signatures of merchants, ministers, and physicians who swore to what they saw. Their testimonies outlived them. So, was it fraud? A mind unraveling under trauma? Or did something truly unseen stake a claim on a young woman and refuse to give her peace? In the end, we're left with one immutable fact. The Great Amherst Mystery has never been solved, and there's an orgy of compelling evidence that it was a genuine occurrence. I'm John Genua, you're watching America's Strangest History. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up, and remember, not everything in this world can be explained, and the unexplained is what we do.